Why would a man with 3 engineering patents choose to mop floors at midnight? Why would a CEO making millions feel more alone than the janitor she barely noticed? When Adelaide spilled coffee on Carter that Tuesday night, she never imagined the invisible man cleaning her office held the key to saving her company and her soul. The 42nd floor of Madison Tower stood empty at 9:45 that Tuesday evening, save for the solitary glow emanating from the corner office. Adelaide Blackstone sat behind her mahogany desk, her third cup of coffee growing cold as she reviewed quarterly reports for the 4th time. At 32, she had become the youngest CEO in the company's history, a triumph that tasted increasingly hollow with each passing night spent alone in this glass cage above the city. The photograph on her desk lay face down, had been that way for 6 months since Nathan decided her ambition left no room for him. She told herself it was his loss, that weak men couldn't handle successful women, but the silence of the office whispered different truths. Carter Rivera pushed his maintenance cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished wood floor. His navy jumpsuit bore his name on a red-bordered badge, though after 2 years, he doubted anyone in the building knew it. At 35, he moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to be invisible, checking each office's electrical systems with practiced precision. The engineering textbook tucked into his cart's lower shelf remained unopened tonight, too tired to study after Serena's parent-teacher conference. His wedding ring caught the light as he knelt to inspect an outlet that had been sparking intermittently for a week. He'd reported it 3 times, but emergency repairs for the executive floor apparently didn't include prevention, only crisis response. The collision happened because Adelaide was checking her phone while walking, absorbed in an email about tomorrow's merger deadline. Her heel caught Carter's toolbox, sending her stumbling forward, the coffee cup tilting dangerously in her hand. The dark liquid cascaded across the floor, flowing directly toward the exposed outlet where Carter knelt. His reaction was instant, grabbing Adelaide's arm to pull her back while simultaneously throwing his body between her and the potential electrical hazard. The coffee pooled around his knee, soaking through his uniform as he quickly unplugged the nearby equipment and contained the spill with practiced movements. "Watch where you leave your equipment," Adelaide snapped, her anger a thin mask over embarrassment. She smoothed her skirt, refusing to acknowledge how his quick thinking had potentially prevented a serious accident. Carter rose slowly, his calm eyes meeting hers for just a moment before dropping respectfully. "My apologies, Miss Blackstone. Please step back while I ensure the area is safe." She didn't know his name, had passed him perhaps 100 times in 2 years without ever truly seeing him. To her, he was just part of the building's infrastructure, as invisible as the plumbing, until something went wrong. "I'll be speaking to your supervisor about this," she said, already walking away, her heels clicking sharp staccato notes against the floor. Carter said nothing, merely continued cleaning, his movements methodical and thorough. It wasn't until she disappeared into the elevator that he noticed her access card on the floor, likely fallen during the stumble. He picked it up, studied her photograph for a moment, then placed it in his pocket. He would turn it into security, let them handle returning it. Direct interaction with executives never ended well for people like him. The following evening arrived with an unseasonable storm, rain lashing against the building's windows with unusual force. Adelaide had stayed late again, preparing for a critical board presentation when the main elevator shuddered to a stop between the 31st and 32nd floors. The lights flickered once, then died, leaving only the emergency lighting, casting eerie shadows in the confined space. Her breathing quickened, the walls suddenly seeming to press closer. She jabbed at the emergency button, fighting the panic that had plagued her since childhood, since the day she'd been trapped in her father's office building during an earthquake. "This is maintenance," a calm voice came through the intercom. "Please remain calm. I can see you on the security monitor. You're perfectly safe." She didn't recognize Carter's voice, couldn't see him in the mechanical room, manually checking each system. "The storm has triggered our safety protocols. I need about 40 minutes to override them manually. Can you tell me your name?" "Adelaide Blackstone," she managed, hating how small her voice sounded. "Please, I need to get out. Miss Blackstone, I'm going to stay on the line with you the entire time. My name is Carter. I want you to focus on my voice. I'm going to explain exactly what I'm doing so you know progress is being made." His tone remained steady, professional yet somehow warm. "Right now, I'm accessing the main control panel. The elevator hasn't fallen or broken, it's actually doing exactly what it's designed to do during power fluctuations, keeping you safe." For 40 minutes, he kept talking, his voice a lifeline in the darkness. He told her about the building's engineering, making it interesting rather than technical. When she mentioned the presentation, he shared a story about his daughter Serena's science project presentation, how she'd been so nervous she'd forgotten her own name at first, but then delivered it perfectly. Sometimes the anticipation is worse than the reality, he said. And Adelaide found herself actually laughing, the sound surprising in the confined space. When the doors finally opened, Carter stood there in his maintenance uniform, tools in hand, a concerned expression on his face. Recognition dawned on her, the janitor from last night's coffee incident. He extended his hand to help her out, and she took it, surprised by the steadiness of his grip. "Thank you," she said, meaning it, though she quickly pulled her hand away once on solid ground. "Just doing my job, Miss Blackstone," he replied, already turning back to his equipment. She walked away, but something made her glance back. He was still watching, ensuring she made it safely to the stairwell. 2 weeks passed before their paths crossed meaningfully again. Another storm, this one worse, sending power fluctuations throughout the building. Adelaide's laptop died just as she was finalizing her presentation, the autosave failing, hours of work vanishing into digital oblivion. She put her head in her hands, for once allowing despair to creep in. Tomorrow's board meeting would determine the company's direction for the next 5 years, and she had nothing. "Excuse me, Miss Blackstone." Carter stood in her doorway, holding a portable battery backup. "I noticed the power issues affecting this floor. This should give you about 3 hours of stable power." He set it up without being asked, his movements efficient. As her laptop hummed back to life, she noticed him glancing at her screen. "The Morrison acquisition?" he asked, then caught himself. "Sorry, I shouldn't." "You know about it?" she asked, surprised. "I empty the boardroom trash. Sometimes, people talk like I'm not there." He paused, then added, "Your competitor analysis chart, if you don't mind me saying, might be more compelling if you included the technical infrastructure comparisons. Morrison's systems are outdated by at least 7 years." She stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" "I used to work in the industry," he said simply. "Would you like help recreating your presentation? I remember most of what was on your screen when I walked by earlier." For the next 2 hours, they worked together, Carter revealing an understanding of corporate finance and technical systems that astounded her. He suggested improvements she hadn't considered, caught errors she'd missed. When she asked why a janitor knew so much about engineering and finance, he simply said, "Everyone has a story, Miss Blackstone. Mine just took an unexpected turn." The storm passed, her presentation was saved and improved, and something had shifted between them. As he gathered his equipment to leave, she called out, "Carter?" He turned. "Thank you. And I'm sorry about the coffee incident. I was rude." "We all have bad days," he replied. "Good night, Miss Blackstone." Friday evening brought an unexpected visitor to the building. Adelaide was waiting for the elevator when she heard a child's voice in the lobby. Peering around the corner, she saw Carter sitting with a young girl, maybe 8 years old, her school uniform neat despite the late hour. Serena had her father's eyes but a brightness all her own, chattering about her day while Carter helped her with mathematics homework. "Why don't you use your engineering degree anymore, Daddy?" Serena asked, and Adelaide found herself holding her breath for the answer. Carter's voice was gentle. "Because taking care of you matters more than any job, sweetheart. After Mommy got sick, I needed work that let me be there for you during the day. Night shift means I can make you breakfast, take you to school, pick you up, help with homework. But you were important before. You invented things. I'm important now," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I'm your dad. That's the most important job I'll ever have." Adelaide retreated to her office, Carter's words echoing in her mind. She thought of her own father, who'd built an empire but missed every recital, every birthday, every moment that mattered until a heart attack at 55 ended his chances to make amends. She'd followed his pattern, choosing success over connection, telling herself she had time to have a life later. But watching Carter with Serena, she wondered if she'd been measuring success by the wrong metrics all along. Unable to resist, she searched his name online that weekend. The results stunned her. Carter Rivera had been a senior engineer at Hartley Industries, holder of 3 patents, winner of an innovation award that had made national news. Everything stopped abruptly 3 years ago. Further searching revealed why. Matilda Rivera's obituary, a young teacher who'd fought cancer for 2 years before succumbing, leaving behind a devoted husband and young daughter. The medical bills would have been astronomical. The career sacrifice suddenly made perfect sense. She pulled his employee file on Monday, using her executive access. Perfect attendance record, never a complaint, salary that was a third of what he'd made as an engineer. Her monthly bonus was more than his annual income. The shame of it sat heavy in her stomach, especially remembering how she'd threatened his job over spilled coffee. He'd saved her from potential electrocution, and she'd responded with threats. The emergency board meeting came without warning Tuesday morning. Archibald Sterling, A corporate raider with a reputation for hostile takeovers had acquired enough shares to demand a vote of no confidence in Adelaide's leadership. She had 3 hours to prove her value or lose everything she'd worked for. The technical presentation that would prove the company's future viability was crucial, but as she opened the files, error messages cascaded across her screen. The files were corrupted, possibly sabotage, definitely catastrophic. The IT department was helpless. "We need at least 6 hours to recover the data, if it's even possible," the department head explained. Adelaide had 3. In desperation, she found herself taking the elevator to the basement, where Carter was just starting his early shift. "I need your help," she said without preamble. "I know you have no reason to help me, but I'm asking anyway." He didn't hesitate. "Show me the problem." For the next 2 hours, Carter worked with an intensity she'd never seen, using programming skills that spoke of years of advanced training. He didn't just recover her files. He enhanced them, adding the technical comparisons he'd suggested during the storm, creating visualizations that made complex data instantly comprehensible. With 30 minutes to spare, he looked up from the computer. "There's something else," he said. Sterling's weakness is his old-school thinking. He doesn't understand modern technical infrastructure. If you add this section about quantum computing applications, the board will see possibilities he can't even comprehend. She did, and it worked. The board voted overwhelmingly in her favor, Sterling's challenge crushed by the sheer force of her presentation's vision. As the board members filed out, congratulating her, she saw Carter in the hallway, emptying waste baskets, as if he hadn't just saved her career. She was about to approach him when Sterling's voice made her freeze. "Hello, brother-in-law," Sterling said to Carter, his tone venomous. Carter stiffened. "Archibald. Still playing janitor, I see. Matilda would be so proud." "Matilda saw you for what you are," Carter replied quietly. "That's why she left your family's business." Adelaide ducked into a supply closet, leaving the door cracked to hear. "I could have helped with her medical bills," Sterling continued. "But you had to be proud. And after she died, when you came begging for your old job back. That was particularly satisfying to deny." "You've blocked me from every engineering position in the city," Carter stated. No emotion in his voice. "And I'll continue to do so. Unless..." Sterling smiled coldly. "Stop helping Blackstone. I'll destroy her eventually, but if you stay out of it, I'll make sure you get back into engineering. Think of Serena's future." Carter stood straighter. "I am thinking of her. I'm thinking I want her to grow up knowing her father chose integrity over opportunity. Matilda knew what you were, Archibald. That's why she walked away from your money to marry me. And that's why you really hate me, because she chose love over your family fortune." Sterling's face darkened. "Then remain a janitor forever. And when I destroy Blackstone's company, I'll make sure you're the first one terminated." After Sterling left, Adelaide emerged from the closet. Carter wasn't surprised to see her. "How long has he been sabotaging you?" she asked. "Does it matter? Serena has what she needs." "It matters to me," she said fiercely. "You deserve better than this." He shrugged. "Deserving and getting rarely align, Miss Blackstone. Good night." But Adelaide couldn't let it go. The next evening, she waited by his maintenance station with a formal offer letter. "Senior technical advisor position," she said. "Day shift, full benefits, triple your current salary." "I don't want charity," he said, not taking the letter. "It's not charity. I need you. Sterling won't stop, and I need someone who understands both engineering and corporate strategy. Someone I can trust." She paused. "I'm also proposing we work together to document Sterling's corporate sabotage. Not just against you, but others. Men like him always have patterns." Carter considered this. "I pick up Serena every day at 3:30. That's non-negotiable." "Family first," Adelaide agreed. "I'm learning that's actually good business." He took the letter. "1-month trial? Whatever you need." The transition wasn't smooth. Department heads questioned why a janitor was suddenly attending strategic meetings. Adelaide shut them down firmly. "Carter Rivera has more patents than everyone in this room combined. We're lucky to have him." Carter transformed their operations, implementing systems Sterling couldn't match or understand. But more than that, he changed the culture. He knew every employee's name, from the mailroom to middle management, because he'd been invisible among them for 2 years. He brought their concerns to Adelaide, helped her see the company as a community, not just a corporation. Late nights became working dinners, with Serena doing homework at the conference table while Adelaide and Carter strategized. Adelaide found herself helping Serena with essay writing while Carter coded improvements to their systems. It felt natural, comfortable, like something she hadn't known she'd been missing. "You smile more now, Dad," Serena observed one evening, looking between them with 8-year-old wisdom. Carter glanced at Adelaide, who was explaining metaphors to his daughter with patience he wouldn't have expected from a CEO. "Good people do that," he said softly. Adelaide heard him, felt something warm bloom in her chest. Later, after Serena had fallen asleep on the conference room couch, Adelaide found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. Her father's death, the way he'd worked himself into an early grave chasing success that ultimately meant nothing. How she'd followed his path, thinking if she could just achieve enough, it would somehow validate his sacrifice. "He would want you happy, not just successful," Carter said, his hand almost touching hers across the table. "Success without joy is just elaborate failure." The moment hung between them, full of possibility, until her phone shattered it. Sterling had made his final move. Their biggest client would walk unless Adelaide stepped down within 24 hours. The emergency board meeting the next morning was packed. Sterling sat smugly in the corner, certain of victory. The board members looked uncomfortable, torn between supporting Adelaide and protecting their investments. The discussion was leaning toward asking her to step down when Carter entered uninvited. "May I address the board?" he asked formally. The board chairman looked to Adelaide, who was as surprised as anyone. "Mr. Rivera is our senior technical advisor," she said. "I trust his input." Carter connected his laptop to the presentation system. "Board members, I want to show you a pattern of corporate sabotage spanning 3 years. The slides began documented evidence of Sterling's systematic destruction of competitors, not just Carter but 6 other employees across different companies who'd crossed him. Email trails, financial records, witness statements, Carter had quietly compiled. "This isn't just about me or Miss Blackstone," Carter concluded. "It's about whether you want to be associated with someone who operates through extortion and sabotage. The legal liability alone should concern you." The vote was unanimous. Sterling was banned from any association with the company, escorted out by security while threatening lawsuits that everyone knew would only expose his crimes further. As the board members dispersed, Carter quietly packed up his laptop to leave. "Carter Rivera is the reason we still have a company," Adelaide announced, stopping him. "I want that on record." 3 months later, the company's celebration for their most successful quarter ever filled the top floor. Carter wore a suit for the first time since Matilda's funeral, the Chief Innovation Officer title still feeling surreal. Serena twirled in her party dress, dancing with other employees' children, her laughter bright as stars. Adelaide watched them from beside the windows, no longer behind her desk but part of the celebration. Carter approached with 2 cups of coffee, offering one with a gentle smile. "Careful," he said. "I might spill." She laughed, really laughed, the sound surprising them both with its genuineness. "You changed our lives, Adelaide," he said, his voice serious now. "You changed mine first, Carter. You showed me what actually matters." They stood together, watching Serena teach another child her creative multiplication method, and Adelaide realized this was success, not the corner office or the board victories, but this moment, this connection, this family forming in unexpected ways. When Carter's hand found hers, she didn't pull away. When Serena ran over to show them both her dance moves, pulling them onto the floor, Adelaide didn't resist. Later, as the party wound down and Serena dozed on a couch, Carter and Adelaide stood by the windows watching the city lights. That first night, with the coffee, Adelaide said, "I was horrible to you." "You were struggling," he replied. "We all were, in different ways. How did you stay so dignified? Even when I threatened your job?" Carter was quiet for a moment. "Matilda used to say that dignity isn't about how others treat you, it's about how you choose to respond." She faced cancer with such grace, never bitter, always finding something to be grateful for. After she died, maintaining that dignity felt like honoring her memory. "And it's what I want to model for Serena." Adelaide turned to face him fully. "She would be proud of you. Serena is lucky to have you." "She's lucky to have you too," Carter said, surprising her. "You're teaching her that women can be strong and successful while still being kind. That's important." "I'm still learning the kind part," Adelaide admitted. "We're all still learning," Carter said, squeezing her hand gently. The weeks that followed brought a gentle rhythm to their lives. Carter would arrive at the office after dropping Serena at school, and he and Adelaide would have coffee while reviewing the day's priorities. Their professional partnership had evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The company thrived under their combined leadership, but more importantly, they had created something neither had thought possible: balance. Adelaide started leaving the office at reasonable hours, joining Carter and Serena for dinner several times a week. She helped with homework, while Carter cooked, dishes Matilda had taught him, filling the kitchen with warmth and spices. Serena began calling her Aunt Addie, then just Addie, and finally, one evening, slipped and called her mom before catching herself with wide, embarrassed eyes. "I'm sorry," Serena whispered, looking between the two adults with worry. Adelaide knelt beside her chair, taking the girl's small hands in hers. "Don't be sorry, sweetheart. I'm honored. I know I'm not your mom, and I would never try to replace her. But I love you, and if you want to call me that sometimes, it's okay." Serena threw her arms around Adelaide's neck, and over the child's shoulder, Adelaide saw Carter watching with tears in his eyes. Later, after Serena was asleep, he pulled Adelaide onto the balcony of his apartment. "Matilda would have loved you," he said simply. "She always said I needed someone who could match my stubbornness with their own. Someone who wouldn't let me hide in my grief. And she would have been grateful," Adelaide replied, "that you found someone who sees what she saw in you, not just the engineer or the provider, but the man who chooses love over ambition every single time." They were married the following spring, a small ceremony in the company garden that Carter had convinced Adelaide to install on the roof. Serena was the flower girl, Bernie from security walked Adelaide down the aisle, and Amanda from reception cried through the entire ceremony. Sterling's replacement on the board, a woman who'd also faced his sabotage years earlier, officiated with visible joy. In his vows, Carter spoke about second chances, about how sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as accidents, as spilled coffee and power outages, and broken elevators. He talked about finding light in darkness, about choosing hope when grief seemed easier, about the courage it takes to love again. Adelaide's vows were simpler but no less profound. She spoke about learning to see what had always been there, about the difference between being successful and being whole, about finding home not in a corner office, but in the eyes of a man who saw her completely and loved her anyway. She promised Serena to always put family first, to be the mother who showed up, who was present, who chose love over meetings every single time. As they kissed, sealing their union, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, and the city below seemed to pause in recognition of this moment. The photograph on Adelaide's desk, the one that had lain face down for so long, had been replaced with a new one, the three of them at Serena's science fair, where she'd won first place with a project about electrical safety that Carter had inspired and Adelaide had helped her present. 5 years later, Adelaide stood in the same spot where she'd once spilled coffee, but everything else had changed. The office was now a nursery for employees' children, including her own twin boys, named William and Henry, who had Carter's eyes and her determination. Serena, now 13 and brilliant as both her parents, biological and chosen, helped with the babies while completing her advanced mathematics homework. Carter had revolutionized not just their company, but the entire industry, his patents now bringing in enough revenue that they'd established the Matilda Rivera Foundation, providing support for families dealing with medical crises. Adelaide had stepped back from the CEO role, choosing instead to head the foundation, finding more satisfaction in lifting others than in climbing corporate ladders. The old maintenance closet where Carter had kept his supplies had been converted into his private workshop, where he still tinkered with inventions, now with Serena as his apprentice. The executive bathroom had become a meditation room, because Adelaide had learned that success without peace was just anxiety with a better office. Sterling's company had collapsed within a year of his expulsion, his patterns of sabotage finally catching up with him in a spectacular federal investigation. He'd reached out once, through lawyers, seeking a character reference from Carter for his sentencing. Carter had declined, but he'd sent a letter to the judge about the importance of redemption and second chances, though noting that such chances must be earned through genuine change, not simply requested when consequences arrived. Standing in her old office, now transformed, Adelaide remembered that night, the spilled coffee, the sharp words, the dismissal of a man she couldn't have imagined would become her salvation. She thought about the trajectories of lives, how they can change in an instant, how the smallest gestures, catching someone before they fall, staying on an intercom during a panic attack, sharing a story about a daughter's science project, can alter everything. Carter found her there, as he always seemed to, holding Henry while William dozed in the carrier strapped to his chest. "Nostalgic?" he asked, knowing her so well. "Grateful," she corrected, taking Henry from him, feeling the baby's weight like an anchor to joy. "Grateful for spilled coffee, and broken elevators and storms that knocked out power. Grateful for everything that went wrong that led to everything going right." Serena looked up from her homework. "Dad says you two fell in love backwards, enemies to friends to family." "Sometimes," Adelaide said, catching Carter's eye, "the best love stories are the ones that surprise you. The ones that teach you that what you thought you wanted was just fear dressed up as ambition, and what you really needed was someone who could see through all your armor to the person you were meant to be." "That's really cheesy," Addie, Serena said, but she was smiling. The best truths usually are, Carter replied, pulling all of them into an embrace that felt like coming home, like safety, like the answer to questions Adelaide hadn't known she'd been asking all those years alone in her corner office. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in familiar shades of gold and rose, the Rivera Blackstone family headed home together, leaving the office behind for family dinner, homework help, bedtime stories, and all the small moments that make a life worth living. The coffee stain on the carpet had long since been cleaned, but its impact remained proof that sometimes the biggest messes lead to the most beautiful outcomes, that accidents can be gifts, and that love often begins with learning to truly see the invisible people who were always there, waiting to change our lives forever. In the end, Adelaide often reflected, the measure of success wasn't in stock prices or board victories, but in Serena's laughter, in the twins' first steps, in Carter's hand, finding hers across the breakfast table each morning. It was in the knowledge that she'd built something that would last longer than any corporation, a family, a love, a life rich with meaning beyond any spreadsheet's ability to calculate. And it all started with spilled coffee and a janitor who was so much more than he seemed. A man who taught her that the most profound transformations often come from the most unexpected sources, that dignity isn't about position but about character, and that choosing love over ambition isn't a sacrifice, it's the greatest success of all.